Before I get into the main thing I want to talk about today, I need to address something that I've been getting so many messages about this week. People keep asking me why February feels so loaded. Like, it doesn't feel like a normal month. It feels like every day has this weight to it, this pressure building behind everything. And honestly, that's not just you. That's not just overthinking. February 2026 is genuinely one of the most astrologically stacked months we've had in years, maybe decades. And what's happening right now, specifically today and over the next few days, is the hinge point. This is the moment everything pivots. So let me explain what's actually going on. Because I think once you understand the astrology of February 12th, the tension you've been feeling is going to make a lot more sense. First thing, Venus just moved into Pisces 2 days ago on February 10th. And this matters more than it might seem on the surface, because Pisces is actually the sign where Venus is exalted, which in astrology means this is one of the best possible placements for Venus. It's like Venus in Pisces is Venus operating at full power, no friction, no compromise, the full expression of what Venus is actually about: beauty, love, connection, artistic sensitivity, the ability to feel things deeply and let that feeling mean something. Venus in Aquarius, where she's been for the past several weeks, was more intellectual about love, more detached. More I understand this emotion conceptually. Venus in Pisces is completely different. It's emotional immersion. It's the kind of love that doesn't need explanation. It just feels true. And here's what's interesting. Venus didn't enter Pisces alone. Mercury is also in Pisces right now, sitting right there with her. So you've got this Venus-Mercury conjunction forming in the most intuitive, spiritually porous sign of the zodiac. What that means practically is that your communication and your feelings are kind of merging. Like the separation you normally maintain between what you think and what you feel is thinning right now. You might find yourself saying things you didn't plan to say, reaching out to someone because something just told you to, writing something raw and honest that you normally would have edited before sending. That's this energy. It's not recklessness, it's permeability. The logical filter is loosening and what's underneath is coming through. If you've been in a situation where you've known something about a relationship or a connection but haven't been able to put words to it, the next few weeks, while Venus and Mercury are both moving through Pisces, are going to bring a lot of clarity. Not intellectual clarity, but that deeper kind of knowing where you just, you know. Venus in Pisces heightens empathy to almost psychic levels. You might start picking up on what people around you are actually feeling beneath what they're expressing. Pay attention to that. Your intuition about people is running really sharp right now. The shadow side of this placement, and I want to mention it because it's real, is that Venus in Pisces can blur boundaries in love. The same openness that makes this such a beautiful placement can also make it easier to project what you want to feel onto a situation rather than seeing it clearly. There's a tendency under Venus in Pisces to romanticize, to see someone's potential rather than their reality, to make excuses for behavior that doesn't quite sit right because the feeling is so compelling. So yes, lean into the openness and the intuition, but also keep a small grounded part of yourself watching. Not to shut down the feeling, just to make sure the feeling is responding to something real. Mercury is right there with Venus, and Mercury wants facts alongside feelings. Let them work together. For some of you, what's coming up with Venus and Mercury in Pisces is going to be about a creative project as much as a relationship. Pisces is one of the most creatively fertile signs in the zodiac. The ideas that are moving through right now, the ones that feel almost like they're coming from somewhere outside of you, those are worth paying attention to. Capture them, write them down, don't wait for them to be fully formed. The refinement comes later. The download needs to land first. And actually hold on before I keep going. If this is already hitting for you, leave a like and subscribe. I do these breakdowns regularly. And drop a comment below saying Pisces season is here so I can see who's tuning in. Okay, back to it. So, Venus in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, intuition is heightened, emotional truth is rising. That's one layer of what's happening today. But the bigger story, the one that I actually think explains why February has felt like this tense, charged, something is about to snap kind of month, is what Saturn is doing. Saturn is at 29 degrees of Pisces right now. And if you know anything about the 29th degree, you know that's what astrologers call the anaretic degree. It's the final degree of a sign. And the energy of a planet at the 29th degree is this incredibly concentrated version of everything that sign represents, like it's distilling down into its most essential meaning right before the door closes. Saturn at 29 degrees of Pisces is doing this right now. Tomorrow, February 13th, Saturn crosses into Aries. And that ingress, that moment of Saturn entering Aries, is one of the most significant astrological events of this entire decade. So today, February 12th, is the last full day of Saturn in Pisces for years. Actually, let me put this in perspective. Saturn won't be back in Pisces until 2052. If you're in your 20s or 30s right now, you will likely be in your 50s or 60s the next time Saturn transits Pisces. This is genuinely a once-in-your-generation kind of shift, and you're living the final hours of it right now. Saturn has been in Pisces since March 2023, almost 3 years, and during that time, Saturn in Pisces was asking everyone to build structure around things that are naturally formless. Spirituality, creative vision, emotional healing, intuition, the things we can't see or measure. Saturn asked us to take those things seriously, to not let them float away into fantasy, but to actually work with them, commit to them, make them real. Some of you spent these 3 years building a spiritual practice. Some of you worked through grief or healing that you'd been avoiding for a long time. Some of you were forced to get honest about things you'd been dreaming about, but not actually doing. Some of you confronted the places where you were using spiritual ideas or emotional complexity as a way to avoid facing concrete reality. All of that is Saturn in Pisces. Saturn in Pisces also had a way of bringing certain illusions to the surface. If you had a relationship, a belief system, a self-image, a financial situation, anything that was being held together by wishful thinking rather than actual reality, Saturn in Pisces had a way of dissolving the fog around it. Not always comfortably. Sometimes that clarity was genuinely painful. But there's a difference between pain that opens something and pain that just hurts. Saturn in Pisces, at its best, was pain that opened something, that showed you where you were actually standing versus where you thought you were standing. And at 29 degrees right now, today, Saturn is asking you, what did you actually learn? What are you actually taking with you? Because the things that haven't been resolved, the lessons that haven't fully landed, Saturn has a habit of making them really obvious at this final degree. You might feel a particular kind of urgency today or this week, like something needs to be acknowledged or released before something new can begin. That's not in your head. That's the anaretic degree doing exactly what it does. There might also be a feeling of nostalgia or wistfulness that comes up around this time. Not for a specific person or thing necessarily, but more like a feeling of the end of a chapter, which it is. You're closing a 3-year cycle. The 29th degree often brings this kind of emotional review, like the highlights are playing back before the credits roll. Let yourself feel whatever comes up around that. It's appropriate, it's real, and it's part of the integration. Now, Pisces is particularly interesting here because Neptune, the planet that rules Pisces, is currently sitting at 0 degrees of Aries. Neptune made its own historic ingress into Aries earlier this year, ending a 14-year cycle through Pisces. So what you've got right now is Venus and Mercury in Pisces doing deep, intuitive, heart-open work in the sign that Saturn is leaving. And Saturn is leaving to join Neptune, which is already waiting in Aries. These two planets, Saturn and Neptune, are going to make an exact conjunction at 0 degrees Aries on February 20th. That conjunction hasn't happened in Aries in over 2,000 years. And Saturn is about to cross into that territory tomorrow. Let me put the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in some context because it helps explain why February feels the way it does. The last time Saturn and Neptune met was in 1989, in Capricorn. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. The Tiananmen Square protests happened. Communism collapsed across Eastern Europe. These are the kinds of historical moments that emerge when Saturn, which represents established structures and systems, meets Neptune, which represents ideals, dreams, and the dissolution of boundaries. When they come together, something that seemed permanent turns out not to be, and something that seemed impossible becomes real. The question for right now is, what in your life or in the world is in that category? What has felt fixed and immovable that is actually more fragile than it appeared? And what has felt like a dream or a vision that might actually be more possible than you've been allowing yourself to believe? When Saturn meets Neptune, the simplest way to explain it is this: Saturn builds walls, Neptune dissolves them. Saturn says be realistic, Neptune says dream bigger. When they come together, there's this paradox where you're asked to build something real out of something visionary, to actually structure your dreams, to make your ideals concrete. For some people, that feels liberating. For others, it feels like a crisis, because the fantasy that was sustaining them has to meet the reality of whether they're actually going to do something about it. Okay, so let's talk about which signs are going to feel the February 12th through 14th energy the most intensely. Pisces, you are front and center for all of this. Saturn leaving your sign is a big deal, and I want you to sit with what that actually means. For almost 3 years, Saturn has been moving through your first house if you're a Pisces sun or rising, which means it's been transiting your identity, your sense of self, your physical presence in the world. Saturn through the first house is famous for feeling like pressure on your sense of who you are, like you've been testing which version of yourself is actually built on something solid versus which parts of you were just habit or performance. And now it's leaving. Tomorrow Saturn crosses out of Pisces. That weight you've been carrying, the seriousness, the sense of being scrutinized or held accountable, starts to lift. Not immediately, but noticeably over the coming weeks. What you're taking into the next chapter is the version of yourself that got tested and held. The parts of you that survived the pressure are real. The parts that fell away during these 3 years, they were already done. You just needed the pressure to reveal that. Venus and Mercury joining you in your sign right now is kind of the universe saying, good job, here's some softness, here's some beauty. Here's some of your natural intuition running without friction. Let yourself feel that. But also Pisces, Saturn moving into Aries means it moves into your second house next. Second house is values, finances, self-worth, what you actually own and build in the material world. The lessons that are coming for you over the next 2.5 years are around value. What you value, whether your income reflects what you're actually worth, whether you're giving your gifts away for free in situations that don't honor them. Start thinking about that now, not with anxiety, just with awareness. Aries, Saturn is coming to your first house. And I know that might sound heavy, but let me give you some context. Saturn in your first house is one of the most productive, powerful placements for long-term development, even though it rarely feels that way in the moment. What you're entering is a multi-year period of serious self-building. Saturn asks Aries to slow down, which is genuinely not your preferred pace. You're a fire sign. You like to move fast, decide quickly, initiate, and then see what happens. Saturn in Aries is going to make you more deliberate, more intentional, more willing to do the slower, harder version of building something real, rather than the exciting but not sustained version you might default to. That doesn't mean stop. It doesn't mean you can't be bold or pioneering. Saturn in Aries doesn't want Aries to become cautious. It wants Aries to become disciplined. There's a huge difference. Caution is about fear. Discipline is about choosing which battles are worth your full commitment and then actually showing up for those battles with consistency over time. That's what the next 2.5 years are offering Aries. The chance to become the kind of person who doesn't just start things brilliantly, but follows them through. For Aries born between roughly 1996 and 1999, this is also the start of your Saturn return. A Saturn return, for those who don't know, is when Saturn comes back to the position it was in when you were born. It's a rite of passage that happens around age 29 to 30, and it's generally a time when life asks you to grow up. in whatever area of your life you've been coasting or avoiding or pretending, not punishingly. More like a forced reckoning with what you actually want versus what you've been going through the motions of. Saturn returns are often simultaneously the hardest thing and the most clarifying thing that's happened in someone's life to that point. The other piece for Aries right now is Neptune. Neptune has already been in Aries since earlier this year, sitting at 0 degrees. Neptune in your first house is this incredibly interesting energy because it dissolves your sense of ego boundaries in ways that can be both beautiful and disorienting. You might find yourself more sensitive, more porous, more affected by the emotional atmosphere of the spaces and people around you than you're used to being. That's not weakness. For Aries, learning to receive information through intuition instead of just action is actually a major growth edge. Neptune is offering that, and now Saturn coming in is going to help you do something real with it. If you're an Aries and you've had a big dream or vision that you've been wanting to act on, watch what happens over the next few weeks. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction is literally in your first house, dreams getting structure, ideals becoming real. That's your invitation. But the conjunction is also going to show you the difference between a dream that's genuinely yours and a dream that you've been holding on to because you're not sure who you are without it. Be honest with yourself in that inquiry. The dreams that survive this clarity check are the ones worth building. Cancer, you're feeling this through Jupiter. Jupiter is currently retrograde in Cancer, your first house if you're Cancer rising or in a very personal position for Cancer suns. Jupiter retrograde in your own sign is this deep internal review of expansion and growth. What does abundance actually mean to you? Are you growing in the direction that's genuinely yours, or have you been chasing something that looked like success from the outside but doesn't actually match what your soul wants? Jupiter retrograde often slows down the externals, the visible wins, the tangible expansion, so that the internal work can happen. And Jupiter retrograde in Cancer specifically is asking, are you emotionally ready for the growth you say you want? Because Cancer's growth is always anchored in emotional security and genuine belonging. You can't really expand if you don't feel safe. So if things have felt slow or stalled for Cancer since Jupiter went retrograde, that's not a punishment. That's Jupiter asking you to sort out the emotional foundation before the outer expansion picks up again. Jupiter goes direct in Cancer on March 10th. What you're working on internally right now is setting up the launch point for what comes next. The Venus-Jupiter dynamic is really significant for you this month too. Venus in Pisces forms a gorgeous trine to Jupiter in Cancer. Trine means natural flow, harmonious energy, things coming together without force. This is actually one of the most beautiful aspects in the sky right now. And it's a water trine, meaning it's deeply emotional, intuitive, and connected to the theme of genuine care and real love. For Cancer, this is the kind of energy where relationships deepen naturally, where you say the honest thing and it lands softly, where you allow yourself to receive love instead of only giving it. That last part is important for Cancer, the receiving. Let yourself be loved right now. The sky is set up for it. Aquarius, the eclipse is coming for you. The solar eclipse on February 17th is at 28 degrees of Aquarius, and right now, the Sun is at 23 degrees of your sign, moving toward that exact point. You're in the pre-eclipse shadow already. You might have noticed that things have been feeling unsettled or uncertain around your sense of identity and direction, like something is on the verge of changing but hasn't fully revealed itself yet. That's exactly where you are. Eclipses in your own sign are identity reset points. They show you who you've been and start moving you toward who you're becoming. The change that's coming isn't random. It's been building. There's also a very interesting Jupiter-Aquarius dynamic happening. Pluto is currently at around 3 to 4 degrees of Aquarius, where it's been for a while now. And the eclipse at 28 degrees is at the other end of the sign. What's interesting is that Pluto in Aquarius has been doing long, slow generational work on the idea of what community and collective identity even means. The eclipse is now asking, what does your individual identity look like within that bigger picture? Where are you claiming your personal power? within the systems and structures and communities that surround you. Aquarius is always in this tension between the individual and the collective, and this eclipse is surfacing that in a personal way. One thing to know about this eclipse: it squares Uranus, which just turned direct in Taurus on February 3rd. Uranus direct adds a quality of sudden movement, like something that's been stuck or slow is starting to move again. The combination of a solar eclipse squaring Uranus means some of the changes that come in around February 17th might feel abrupt or unexpected, not necessarily in a bad way. More in a, "oh, okay, that's the direction" kind of way. Things that weren't clear are about to get clear, and things that were clear but needed an external push to move are about to move. For everyone, regardless of your sign, what's important to understand about right now is this: we're in a waning crescent moon phase, dark moon territory. This is the part of the lunar cycle that's about completion, release, rest before the new. It's not an energy for pushing. It's an energy for letting things fall away that are already loosening. The projects you've been trying to force that keep not working, this is a good time to assess whether they actually need more force or whether they need to be released entirely. The relationships where you've been working really hard and not feeling it returned, this is a good time to get honest about whether that investment is sustainable. The dark moon has a particular quality of honesty to it. When you're in this phase, the noise of expansion and activity quiets down enough that you can actually hear what's true. Some of what you hear might be uncomfortable. That's okay. Information is better than comfortable confusion. Use the quiet of this lunar phase to notice what you actually want, stripped of the pressure and the performance. What do you want when no one is watching? What would you choose if you weren't thinking about how it looked? The dark moon before an eclipse is a particularly powerful time for that kind of honest inventory. If you're someone who works with intention setting or manifestation practices, this is also worth knowing. Solar eclipses are not considered the right time for aggressive intention setting. They're better approached with openness than with a list of demands, because eclipses bring in what needs to come, not always what we think we want. The better practice around an eclipse is to clear and release rather than to direct. So over the next few days, if you feel moved to let go of something, an old story, a grudge, a plan that stopped feeling right, a version of yourself that you've outgrown, do it. The eclipse in Aquarius on the 17th is going to activate new intentions whether or not you consciously set them. Your job right now is to make space. Practically speaking, some things that work well in this pre-eclipse dark moon energy, journaling, especially the kind where you write without editing, just let it come out. Cleansing your space, your phone, your feeds, your inbox, whatever feels cluttered. Having conversations you've been putting off, because Venus and Mercury in Pisces make honesty land softly right now. Resting, genuinely resting, not productive resting where you're secretly still working. Just rest, because a lot is about to move and your nervous system will benefit from stillness before the motion. And then the solar eclipse on the 17th is going to bring in a completely new lunar cycle and a new set of intentions. You'll feel the shift. But right now, on February 12th, in this dark moon energy with Saturn at the final degree of Pisces, the invitation is to notice what you're already done with, what's already ending naturally, what you've been holding on to out of habit rather than genuine care. There's something about Saturn leaving Pisces that feels like waking up from a long dream. Not in a harsh, jarring way. More like the light has shifted and you can suddenly see the room more clearly. Things that were foggy or undefined during these 3 years are starting to have more definite shape. The uncertainty that you might have been living with for a while is starting to give way to something you can actually work with. And into all of this, Venus is in Pisces, which means love is soft and open and real right now. Mercury is in Pisces, which means your words can carry feeling right now if you let them. The intuition is working. The emotional intelligence is high. Use it. Say the thing you've been circling around. Have the honest conversation you've been avoiding. Reach out to the person you've been thinking about. Pisces energy dissolves the hesitation that normally lives between what you feel and what you express. The window is open. All right, look, Saturn, leaving Pisces tomorrow is not going to be easy for everyone, because big changes rarely are. Some of what's clearing right now has been with us for years, and even things we know are done can still feel strange to let go of. There's a difference between knowing something is over and actually feeling okay about it being over. Those two things don't always happen at the same time. You might have known for months, even longer, that something in your life had run its course. A relationship, a way of seeing yourself, a belief you'd been holding on to because it felt safer than the alternative. Knowing it's done and actually releasing it are separate steps. And you don't have to rush from one to the other. The transition is still real, even if it's uncomfortable, even if there's grief in it, even if you're not sure what comes next. The uncertainty doesn't mean something went wrong. It means you're actually in the moment of change instead of just talking about it from a safe distance. What I also want to say is that the grief, if there is grief, is legitimate. Saturn in Pisces did ask a lot. It asked you to be honest about things that were easier to leave undefined. It asked you to take seriously the parts of yourself, your creative life, your spiritual life, your emotional patterns that are genuinely hard to quantify or explain to anyone else. A lot of what happened over these 3 years wasn't visible to the outside world. The internal shifts that happened didn't always translate into events or announcements or things you could point to. And that can be isolating. It can leave you feeling like you worked really hard and have very little to show for it. I want to push back on that, because I think what you built is just quieter than what society usually celebrates. The things you built are in how you see yourself now versus how you saw yourself in March of 2023, in what you're no longer willing to tolerate, in the ways you relate to your own intuition and your own emotional truth. Those changes aren't small. They just don't always come with a certificate. But I genuinely think we're all more ready for this than we realize. 3 years of Saturn in Pisces taught us something about what's actually real in us. And I want to sit with that for a second, because I think it's easy to underestimate how much this transit asked of people. Saturn in Pisces wasn't flashy. It didn't announce itself loudly. It worked quietly, in the parts of you that nobody else could see. In the private moments when you had to decide whether to keep pretending or start being honest. In the way your relationship to spirituality or faith or your own inner life either deepened into something you could actually rely on or finally revealed itself as something you'd been performing. In the way your creative work either became more genuinely yours or you had to admit you'd been avoiding it. In the relationships that either grew into something real during these years or quietly stopped making sense. 3 years of that kind of interior work is significant. Even when it felt like nothing was happening, something was always happening underneath. Saturn in Pisces did its work on you, and the proof isn't in what you can show anyone else. It's in what you know now that you didn't know 3 years ago. What's real is solid now. What wasn't real has already gone. That's not a loss, that's a foundation. And the distinction matters, because there's a version of this moment where you look at what isn't there anymore and feel like you failed, like the years were hard for nothing, like you came out the other side with less than you went in with. That reading is wrong. You came out with less of what was never actually yours to carry. You came out lighter in the places that were holding you back, and more grounded in the places that matter. That's a completely different accounting, and it's the accurate one. There's also something I want to say about what comes next, because I know some of you are looking at Saturn entering Aries and feeling a little anxious. Like, okay, one intense transit just ended. Do we have to immediately go into another one? And honestly, yes. That's how this works. But here's what I'd offer. You're going into Saturn in Aries with 3 years of internal work behind you. You're not the same person who entered Saturn in Pisces in 2023. The version of you that starts the Saturn in Aries cycle tomorrow is more self-aware, more honest about what you want, more grounded in what's actually real. That matters. Saturn in Aries is about building, about action, about having the courage to go after what you want with intention and discipline. And that kind of work lands differently when you actually know what you want and you actually trust yourself, which, thanks to Saturn in Pisces, more of you do. So take what's resonating from this, leave what doesn't, and trust yourself through whatever comes up over the next few days. Trust that the clarity you're feeling right now is real, even if you can't fully explain it yet. Trust that the things falling away are falling away because they're done, not because something is wrong with you. Trust that the new energy coming in with Saturn entering Aries and with the eclipse on the 17th is meeting a version of you who is actually ready for it, even if that readiness doesn't feel loud or certain or particularly dramatic. Sometimes readiness just feels like showing up, like still being here after everything, like being willing to see what comes next without needing to already know what it is. This is a big moment. You're in it, and the version of you that comes out the other side of this eclipse season is the one you've been building toward for 3 years. That version is ready, even if you don't feel it yet. The work was already done. If this was helpful, leave a like and subscribe, and drop "ready for the new" in the comments. I love seeing who's moving through this energy with me. Alright, sending you good energy through this shift. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.